What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about TYT's reaction to Jordan Peele because it is objectively hilarious and insanely hypocritical. But before we get started, I do want to say thank you guys so much for following me on Twitter and putting me over 1,000 Twitter followers like I asked in my last video. Turns out all you guys needed to know was that I was actually on Twitter and what my Twitter handle was, and you were down to follow me. So I probably should have done that a long time ago instead of complaining on Twitter about how I don't have enough followers on Twitter. Who knew? Also, at the time that I'm shooting this video, I'm currently on the cusp of 50,000 subscribers. If I make it by the time that it's out, then thank you guys so much for 50,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. That is halfway to my year-end goal for 2019. So thank you guys. And if I don't make it by the time this video comes out, then I guess no thank you? It's a binary world, so those are my only two options, I guess. Let's get into the video.
Jordan Peele is, of course, an incredible filmmaker.
So we're gonna cut this off right here because this whole TYT video has a very petty and like talk down to the audience tone. So I'm gonna point out that Jordan Peele is not a great filmmaker. He's had two good films. I would argue that one is much better than the other. But it's not like we haven't seen this before where some guy puts out a really good movie that's a big hit, then puts out another movie that's pretty good, and then completely falls off into awful, terrible filmmaker realm. Also, in TYT's attempt to overinflate the achievements of Jordan Peele as a filmmaker, they kind of undercut his achievements as a writer because Jordan Peele is an incredibly successful sketch comedy writer. And he won the Oscar for Get Out for Best Original Screenplay. So I would say that his strength lies much more in a writer than a filmmaker, which again, we've seen two hits, but the rest is remaining to be determined.
Recently, he was speaking to students at the Upright Citizens Brigade in Hollywood, and he said something about his casting choices that has struck a nerve with some people. So he says, I don't see myself casting a white dude as the lead in my movie. Not that I don't like white dudes, but I've seen that movie. He continues to say, the way I look at it, I get to cast black people in my movies. I feel fortunate to be in this position where I can say to Universal, I want to make a $20 million horror movie with a black family, and they say yes.
Okay, so those were Jordan Peele's comments, and I just have to start off and say, I'm actually not outraged at all by what Jordan Peele said. Yes, I understand 100% that the way he phrased it, if a white director would have phrased it that exact same way, then they would have been called a racist. But I'm not one of these people that's in favor of forced diversity, and if Jordan Peele doesn't want to make a movie with a white male lead, then he shouldn't be forced to. Also, the purpose of asking him this question is so that he would say no, so that this person can generate headlines, and I really didn't want to play into that. Also, Jordan Peele writes his own movies, and these are his original characters, and a lot of the movies that he writes are for black characters. Like, the movie Get Out does not work if the character isn't a black dude, as it portrays the fear that a black person has when they go to meet their white girlfriend's family. A lot of times the racial makeup of a specific character or the cast doesn't really matter, but in the case of that movie, if you change out Chris's character for white dude, then it does change the movie, and that's not the movie that Jordan Peele wanted to make. Now, this is less true for his movie Us. You could have had any family, but Jordan Peele wanted to have a black family, so he made a movie with a black family. I don't really care about that. I do understand that the way he said it is pretty suspect, but we're making a video on the way TYT reacts because they do care about the racial makeup of cast, and they do care about the racial makeup of characters, and that's what we're gonna laugh at.
So, first of all, when white people were the stars in movies, the rationale that the studios used, so-called liberal Hollywood, which in fact financially was deeply conservative, and all of the right wing said was, hey, look, man, that's what makes money. Sorry, if black people made money, then all the stars would be black. Well, I got good news for you.
I think Cenk might need a doctor because he starts this sentence off with, when white people were the stars of movies, as if that's not the case now. We have white people leading movies, we have black people leading movies, we have Asian people leading movies. It's not a binary choice, it's not one or the other. But as you're gonna see throughout this video, Cenk does see it as one or the other.
Black people now make more money in movies. Movies directed by black people, movies starring black people. So you got, first of all, we already knew it, but it was Hollywood's entrenched conservative nature, and I'm being polite in using those words, that led them to not having black star in movies when it was obvious.
So part of Cenk Uyghur's personality, if you haven't picked up on it in the many video responses I've made to him, is that he's insanely contrarian for no reason. So right here, he inserts that Hollywood is actually conservative and not really liberal, because TYT is the most liberal, the most progressive outlet. So everything by comparison to them is deeply conservative.
That led them to not having black star in movies when it was obvious.
Also, Cenk makes a number of ridiculous claims here, like Hollywood hasn't had black leads in films, which is not true. Have you ever seen a movie with Will Smith? It's usually a movie starring Will Smith. You also have Sam Jackson, Forrest Whitaker, and this long-running joke about how Morgan Freeman is in movies specifically to explain the plot of the movie. Even South Park did a bit on that. But according to Cenk, this is a new thing.
Black people now make more money in movies. Movies directed by black people, movies starring black people. I was thinking, Jesus, how do I get in the movies? Because if you make movies that star black people, it's gonna make unreal money, right?
Also, what is he talking about? Black people now make the most money, black stars and black directors? The crazy thing about this is that most of their complaints about black representation in film has to do with looking at like the top 100 largest grossing films and counting how many black people are in there. So if black people make the most money, black actors and directors, then what is the root of this complaint? Because as far as I know, that's where it comes from. This is one of the strangest, most incoherent parts about the left's argument. They claim that we don't have black leads in films, which we do. I mean, again, just look at Will Smith's career. Bad Boys came out in the 90s, Independence Day came out in the 90s. These were huge financial hits. Bad Boys 2, Men in Black. I mean, at this point in his career, it would be much more difficult to find a movie where Will Smith played a supporting character rather than a lead character. And all those movies that I named were financial hits.
Look at Medea would make these movies.
I'm sorry, did you just say Medea?
Look at Medea would make these movies.
Yeah, you said Medea. Dude, it's Medea. It's almost as if prior to the story, Cenk Googled a list of movies with black people that made money, and he came up with Medea, having never heard of it before because he can't pronounce it. Obviously, he's never heard it out loud, and decided to serve that up to his audience. By the way, the Medea movies are not good.
Look at Medea would make these movies, the Medea series, were made for like $1.50, and they'd all make unbelievable amounts of money. They're like, oh no, ignore the audience. Ignore the audience.
He bought a movie studio.
I know,
he is so successful.
They do make money because comedies and horror movies, which is what Jordan Peele has made two of, are some of the most profitable movies that you can make, relatively small budgets for huge returns. But the Medea movies market to a niche market. They market to black people that find Tyler Perry funny. They don't have a broad appeal like Jordan Peele's movies. It's actually a shame that you're comparing Jordan Peele to Tyler Perry.
So finally, they do Black Panther, and it breaks all the records. And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we should try that again, right?
I like how Cenk's like, and then they finally made Black Panther. You know what movie existed before any of the Marvel movies? Before Spider-Man got his own movie? Before the X-Men got their own movie? Blade. And I'm not talking about one Blade movie. There were 3 of them, and all of them pretty much existed before the modern era of superhero movies. Spawn is also a movie that existed, so the idea that people haven't made black superhero movies before Black Panther is just a myth. But Cenk doesn't know that, so he regurgitates it as if it's fact.
So finally, they do Black Panther, and it breaks all the records.
I like how Cenk just asserts that Black Panther broke all of the records. You want to get a little specific in that? Because Black Panther did do incredibly well financially, especially in the domestic market. Black Panther actually made more money domestically than Avengers Infinity War, which is a fantastic performance. But where Black Panther underperformed is actually where the real problem lies, and that's in the Chinese market. Because it turns out that the evil white racists who hate black people in movies are Chinese. Seriously, and you guys can take this as a homework assignment. Go and read the Chinese reviews of Black Panther. They're so comically racist that I did not believe they were real. In fact, the Chinese market is so racist that the poster that Marvel put out for everybody else, featuring the whole cast, so you could see like the majority black cast in Black Panther, was not released in China. The poster that they got was just of Chadwick Boseman, but mostly covered in the Black Panther suit to try and trick Chinese audiences into going to see the movie. In fact, the only Marvel movie with a lower rating than Black Panther in the Chinese market is Captain America the First Avenger, and the reason that has a lower rating is because that movie has so much pro-American iconography that it got downgraded by the Chinese. So if we're going to talk about the racial makeup of casting and what goes into it, let's be 100% honest about what we're talking about. When the American film market was more dominant around the world and more important to the studios, there were plenty of black-led films. Will Smith built his entire career on these type of movies. But as time went on and budgets got bigger and the Asian market became more specific, films started to be catered toward the Asian market. So when studios are putting $200 million into their movie, and China is becoming as important, if not more important than the American film market, films have to be catered to Chinese audiences. So if there's any racial disparity in casting in these big blockbusters, it's because of China, not because of the United States. Black Panther didn't disprove that, it proved it. Fortunately for that movie and for Marvel Studios and for people who want to see black people lead superhero films, Black Panther made so much more money than expected domestically that it offset the underperformance of the Asian market. But to pretend that this is about racist Hollywood or evil white right-wing conservatives that are somehow running Hollywood is completely ridiculous.
And so right wing, you shouldn't be triggered at all by this. You should go, hey, free market, baby. Free market.
No,
it turns out black directors make more money. Black stars make more money. I can't have a white guy in my movie. He'll take the movie. I need black actors so we can make some real money in this house.
Oh my God. I can't have white people in my movie because they'll tank the movie. If you ever needed a perfect example of the regressive worldview, I give you that statement from Cenk Uygur. It's not a zero-sum game, Cenk. It's not like these movies having black people in them and succeeding means that white people in movies that are equivalent fail. That's a ridiculous assertion to make, especially since one of the movies that you cited is Black Panther, which exists inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has a lot of different characters and a lot of different successful franchises. And as you've pointed out yourself, the leads of all those other movies in the MCU are white actors and not black people, hence your whole issue. So are you arguing that Black Panther saved the MCU, how it wasn't successful before Black Panther came out? Like, what are you even talking about? I know division and this us versus them mentality is the trademark of the regressive ideology, but Black Panther was greatly aided by being in the MCU. You had all of these built-in fans, a rock-solid introduction in Civil War, and then people got behind Black Panther's own movie, and that's why the domestic box office for Black Panther was so killer. But in Cenk's mindset, Black Panther is against the MCU, or it's the MCU versus Black Panther. It just makes no sense. And they're so ignorant about movies and this topic that they don't realize that Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, actually directed another movie with a black lead that was a huge hit, and that was Creed, starring Michael B. Jordan, who was in Black Panther. This is what happens when you don't know what you're talking about, and then you just Google some movies beforehand and run with it into the story head first.
So I wanted to make sure that I chose people who were at least verified, and here's one of them. The hilarity of this. What is black privilege, you ask? Imagine a white director saying this. Jordan Peele, I don't see myself casting a white dude as my lead in my films.
So Anna starts reading tweets from only verified users, which by the way, she does not stick to. She immediately breaks that rule that she set for herself. And the first tweet that she reads is completely irrefutable.
The hilarity of this. What is black privilege, you ask? Imagine a white director saying this. Jordan Peele, I don't see myself casting a white dude as my lead in my films.
Yes, that tweet is 100% accurate. If a white director said exactly what Jordan Peele said about black leads, then the internet would be ablaze, the Young Turks would be spazzing out nonstop. In fact, they can't find an example of a white person saying something equivalent, so they're going to just pretend that that's how all white people think and then react to that.
There is a difference, right? There is a difference. So if you have a white filmmaker saying, I would not cast a black person or black character as my lead, well then, first of all, it's business as usual.
Right, they've been saying that. They just weren't quoted in an interview, but their actions, they have absolutely been saying that since the beginning of our film industry.
And Brooke, sometimes they do even say it. So when they have white actors play Asian roles, for example, from time to time, they go, what can I do? There aren't enough Asian actors that are successful enough that would be a big enough box office draw, so I had to put white people in it. Well, why are you not triggered by that? Why isn't Daily Wire writing an article about that?
Cenk, that is not what they say. What they say is you need an actress or an actor that's considered a box office draw to even get financing to make some of these films. The examples that people often give for this are Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell, which, by the way, she plays a robot in that movie, so a robot can be anything. It doesn't have to be an Asian robot. And yeah, if Scarlett Johansson wasn't the star of that movie, that American adaptation of the Japanese anime, then the movie probably wouldn't have been financed if you put some random Asian girl there. Anime movies do not do very well in the West anyway, and I don't think Ghost in the Shell did that well in the West. Also, they tried this game with Scarlett Johansson and another movie when she was set to play a transgender person. People got outraged, demand that she left the project. She left the project, and that movie's not getting made. So it's 100% true. The other example people cite as white people taking the roles of Asians is Matt Damon in that movie Great Wall. But the thing with that movie is that was a Chinese movie with the Chinese director paid for by a Chinese production company. So the other major example that people often cite is Chinese people casting who they wanted and not replacing an Asian person with a white person. They just wanted Matt Damon because Matt Damon is not only big in the United States, but older stars are really big in China. So again, China.
He's made 2 films, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think the point here is that a man makes 2 films starring black people, and all of a sudden, we've got to start asking him questions. He's made 2, and after 2, not after 10, not after 20, after 2, it's like, whoa, all right, you're leaving us out there, bud.
Again, nobody's asking Jordan Peele to put white people as the leads of his movie. This was a question, he responded to the question, and then people reacted to his response.
Wayne Allen Root writes, Jordan Peele is a racist. What if I said, I can't imagine casting black people in my films? Wow, low-life racist.
The second tweet that Anna chose to read about people upset about Jordan Peele's comments comes from an unverified user, despite the fact that she said she was going to only use verified users. And it's basically the same as the first tweet, it just uses the word racist.
I think people have a hard time understanding like the different experiences. Like there are different experiences among the races.
And Anna, again, has no response for it because her response to somebody pointing out that there is a clear and present double standard around racial issues, especially coming from the left, is to double down on her clear and obvious double standard on racial issues as a person on the left. Brilliant.
And so if there's one group that has enjoyed the privilege of constantly getting the lead role, I think it makes all the sense in the world for someone who has been part of a disenfranchised group, someone who's worked really hard to get to where he is, and then he finally gets to where he wants to be. He's using that to uplift other members of his community, and I think that's important.
These explanations just drone on and they're so boring. White people have enjoyed having the lead roles as a group. Therefore, it's okay for black people to group up against white people, even though there are plenty of examples that we're just not going to talk about of white directors casting black leads. But forget about that. We're okay with group-based identity politics, but not from white people. And we're going to pretend that white people are doing it when they're not doing it, to then justify black people doing it as a reaction. Because according to our backwards regressive ideology, if we see something we think is bad, we should then imitate it and then celebrate our imitation of that bad thing as if it is an innate good when we do it. Yeah, that's not a double standard at all, Anna. Bravo.
Yeah, it's a rhetorical trick, but guys, in case you want to know why it doesn't make any sense at all, if the situation was reversed, then they would be right. So if the country was majority black, and all the movies had black stars forever, and none of the white stars had made it through, and a couple of white stars finally did break through, and a couple of white directors finally did break through, and they had some success, and then a black director said, I'm not gonna have any white people in my movie, then that would be deeply problematic and it would be racist. Look, I know that the right wingers don't care about the oppression, but the bottom line is, it's not like they have all the power in Hollywood today or in any industry today. So they're saying we're going to allow for more people to be represented, and we're not even proportional yet. We're not anywhere near proportional yet. So to say that, no, they must have white people in their movies is preposterous in the current context of this country. But look, if you trigger them enough, eventually they'll be like, well, all the Medea movies are making all that money. You know what? I demanded a white person play Tyler Perry.
So Cenk goes on this whole rant about proportionality and representation in media. He finishes it up with a joke about how white people and conservatives are going to demand that Tyler Perry is played by a white person, even though they're the people who actively want to change white characters into black characters for diversity. But whatever, you don't need me to respond to that specifically. I'm sure you've heard those arguments a bunch of times. But what I do want to point out is that Jordan Peele's 2 movies are not actually that diverse. They're mostly just white and black people. There might have been one Asian guy in Get Out, but pretty much it's just black people and white people in both of his movies. Now, I'm not against that. I think if you create something, then you can cast whoever you want to portray that on screen. But if you're gonna score movies based on their racial diversity, I'm gonna point out that Jordan Peele's movies aren't actually that diverse, and that the female lead, who turned out to be the antagonist of the film, or one of the antagonists of the film, was a white woman in Get Out. And that most of the people in Us, besides the main family, were white people. So, Jordan Peele, you really need to step it up because diversity is our strength. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about Jordan Peele's initial comments and TYT's reaction and their hypocrisy to those comments in the comments down below. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social medias. You can support me via one-time donation on PayPal or monthly through Patreon or Subscribestar. This has been me talking about TYT failing on the Jordan Peele issue. Till next time.